Some would say, why wouldn't they want world peace? Doesn't everybody want world peace? No, they do not. Some people like war. Now, Trump and Putin coming together would be the biggest thing since the blood and Crip gang truce of '92. Greetings, everyone. As many of you already know, tomorrow morning there will be a meeting between Vladimir Putin and United States President Donald Trump. Now, many people are not really sure why this is such a terrifying thing for some people. Why is it that so many people are afraid for Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to meet and to possibly come together with an alliance and become friends? There are many Democrats that don't want this to happen. There are many Republicans that don't want this to happen. Many members of the EU do not want this to happen. This is a worldwide event, and it has the potential to change the way the world operates for several years to come, perhaps centuries to come. Let me tell you why. The majority of Democrats and Republicans as they are today, along with members of the European Union and several politicians in several countries across this world, are controlled by central bankers, as I like to call them, banksters. These banksters move into the country, they run the country's monetary system, they control the flow of money through interest rates and fractional reserve lending throughout these countries, and often cause lots of turmoil. They often cause lots of internal conflict, and thus they can loan money to both sides of the people on each conflict, and they stay in power that way by making each other fight. Now, Vladimir Putin knows this. He knows it all too well. Vladimir Putin, for those of you that don't know, is an ex-KGB agent. He worked his way up through the Russian government to become prime minister, then to become president, then prime minister again, and then president again. So he's been in a position of power for, I think it was the past 18 years or so. I'd have to look that up. By the time he's out, I think he will have been in power for 24 years. Vladimir Putin has been around the block. He's the most experienced world leader in the world today. He knows how the banksters operate. Now, on the flip side, Donald Trump. Donald Trump, real estate tycoon, then moved on to international business through his real estate. He's been dealing with politicians for his entire life, as he's been dealing with bankers for his entire life. He's one of the few people that the bankers love to call him up and ask him what he thinks and if he's willing to go in on something, because he's had such a keen eye as to what's going to work in real estate and how to take something that's failing and turn it around and make it prosperous. So the banksters love this for years. However, when Donald Trump ran for president, he pledged that he would not take their money, so he would not be beholden to them, and he kept his word. So Donald Trump is not beholden to these banksters, neither is Vladimir Putin. Now, there's several secrets of the past that Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are aware of. For one, Vladimir Putin knows the truth about what happened in Ukraine. The story they tell us in the West is that Vladimir Putin just up and decided to annex Crimea. That's a very small piece of the story, and depending on who you ask, that's not even accurate. If you go to Russia and ask what happened, they would say that the Ukrainian people rightfully elected a pro-Russian government, which was liable to leave NATO and join the Russian Federation. Now, that government was overthrown in a coup while the president was out of town on business. The presidential palace was mobbed and the president was disposed from office, and the opposition took over from the democratically elected president. Now, Russia already had a military base in Crimea. They feared that this military base would be in jeopardy because of the violent way that the Ukrainian government was overthrown by pro-NATO forces. Vladimir Putin, in his mind, felt that he needed to do something to protect this military base. Many of the people in Crimea work in and around this base. So he did something kind of sneaky. He snuck in troops, not really wearing Russian insignia, but these troops were there to make sure that the people siding with the European Union, NATO, etc., did not interfere with the elections. The people of Crimea voted to join Russia. So they want to call it an invasion. Some people may want to say it's an annexing, and other people would say that Crimea voted to join the Russian Federation. Now, the Rothschild banking cartel, as we like to call them sometimes, Vladimir Putin has expelled the Rothschilds from Russia. They no longer have that control over him. He's very content in trying to build up his country without the help from central bankers. He realizes that the problems that they can cause in the nation, he thinks they're better off going it alone with his own currency. Now, when you look at Donald Trump knows what happened on 9/11. You can find more than one clip of him speaking of the destruction done to the Twin Towers and the condition of the towers after the disaster. He was there firsthand. He saw it himself. He was in New York on that day, and he himself says that those buildings were not knocked down by airplanes. He says that there were explosives that brought those buildings down. So he believes that, as well as many other American citizens believe that, who are called conspiracy theorists, some called truthers, but the president is definitely one of these people. He grew up in the business world. So much like Vladimir Putin, he's very familiar with the inner workings of the world. He's very familiar with the inner workings of the central banking system and politicians and the political houses of various nations throughout the world. Now, both of them have made moves the same way that Vladimir Putin has expelled the Rothschilds from Russia. Donald Trump signed legislation in executive order, not legislation, at the end of last year, making it a national emergency for anyone that's involved in pedophilia and human trafficking to be considered an enemy of the state. Thus, those people will not be eligible for civil trials. They would be, in turn, taken to military tribunals and tried for those crimes of human trafficking and pedophilia. Now, those are both moves that they took to get back at these banksters. The human trafficking rings and pedophilia rings are things that these people are known in some circles for using to blackmail those they control who hold political power. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump both know this, and they both would like to do away with this sort of control that the bankers have over the people of the world, regardless of which nation you're in. They pretty much have some influence over the everyday lives of every citizen of every nation on this planet. Now, Trump and Putin coming together would be the biggest thing since the Blood and Crip gang truce of '92. For those that remember, the Bloods and Crips came together following the Rodney King beating trial. The cops were announced to be not guilty. There was a huge riot in the city of Los Angeles. The Bloods and Crips came together. They formed a truce. They decided they were going to fight against the establishment, not fight each other anymore. Needless to say, some things happened. Things have never really been the same since that day, April 29th, 1992. So this would be another enormous coming together of former adversaries. Trump and Putin coming together could mean the end of central banking as we know it. We could possibly end up on a gold standard. We could possibly come up with a gold and silver standard. It's possible that the Fed, and as well as other central banks across the world, will be taken over by members of their political establishments instead of being assigned by independent bankers. That's what a lot of people don't know, is that these banks, while they're called federal banks, it's called the Federal Reserve. There's nothing really federal about it. It's private bankers and they have to answer to no one. They don't have to answer to the president. They don't have to answer to the Congress. They do not have to answer to the judiciary, which means they are not in control of the people of the United States of America. Same thing in any country. They're not under the control of the people. They do what they want. They do what they want when they want to, and they do it how they want to for the most part. Now, the only thing can stop them is if leaders of these nations stop playing along. They stop playing ball with them. If the leaders of the nations don't listen to the central bankers, it's not much the central bankers can do to fight back. They do not have their own army. The only thing they can do is make individual strikes. They do threats, assassinations sometimes, blackmail, character assassinations, which is what they're trying to do to Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. They want the average person to believe that Vladimir Putin is a thug, he's a killer, that he's a maniac, and that he cannot be trusted. However, Vladimir Putin stepped in Syria, stabilized the situation there. Many people would say that he liberated Crimea from the aggressive NATO forces, who are warmongering forces, and they want to increase tensions between Russia and the rest of the world. As far as Trump goes, anyone that lives in the United States knows you can turn on CNN or MSNBC pretty much at any time, 24 hours, 7 days a week, and they will have anti-Trump news on, if you want to call it news. The president calls it fake news for that reason, because it's heavily spin doctored. The news they report on is heavily biased, and then sometimes they take things and it's just not even true. They take something that happened and they twist the meaning around and tell you that it meant something that it didn't. They have several news stories that come from anonymous sources, completely unverified, stories that have to be retracted, stories that they run one day and then try to say that are not true the next. It's an entire mess, and I've never seen it this bad before, to where the news is so dishonest and so biased. And it's pretty obvious that they want to assassinate the character of Donald Trump as well as the character of Vladimir Putin. It scares them to death that these two men will come together and work out a solution to stop the central bankers from holding the world hostage as they've been doing for centuries now. That's right, for centuries now. So you're looking at a very huge change that could be on the horizon here. Now, the reason that may not happen is simply because of this Russia collusion story. I may do another video on this one. In my opinion, the entire story is made up. The entire story is made up. The only reason the story exists is to stop these two men from cutting a deal. These two men cutting a deal would bring about an end to probably every major conflict, or the beginning to an end of every major conflict on the planet. It may be the first step to world peace. Some would say, why wouldn't they want world peace? Doesn't everybody want world peace? No, they do not. Some people like confusion. If they can keep one group fighting another, then the group on top can stay on top, and the other two groups will keep themselves down from fighting each other. This is big. This is a very big meeting tomorrow. It's something we definitely want to watch, and it could be the beginning of a brand new world that we could be living in here. But remember, the biggest story that they have going is what you hear about Russian interference in the United States election is all to stop these two from coming together. Personally, I don't think it happened. There's no evidence that's been released of this to this date. There have been indictments by grand juries, but no convictions. One person jailed for things that have nothing to do with any sort of conspiracy with the Russian government to affect the U.S. elections. There's no evidence that any votes have been changed. There's no evidence that Russia was the one that hacked the DNC server. There's no evidence that Russia was the one that provided documents to WikiLeaks. It's just not there. And then we have a dossier which is supposed to tie Donald Trump to the Russian government, which was supplied by a disavowed MI6 agent. So once again, you have NATO forces trying to stop Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump from coming together because they are really controlled by the bankers, and the bankers don't want this to happen because it could mean their demise or the demise of the control that they have over the majority of the population of this world. So we're going to want to keep our eyes on this one. What happens between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump tomorrow could be very important, could cause very earth-shattering changes in the way we do things in the world today. To the average common person, I wouldn't worry about it. I think that if they do make a deal, it's going to be better for all of us. You could say goodbye to the enormous amount of interest and inflated prices that all of us pay due to the fact that the bankers are the ones that control this. If we remember back in 2008, they ruined the entire worldwide economy. And what did we do? We gave them all their money back, which wasn't really money. We just had to print it all. They used all the fake money to buy all the gold and silver and assets and real estate all over anyway. And then when all that came crashing down, they took people's houses away from them. They took people's cars away from them. They confiscated people's assets. And we didn't have the banks go down. They weren't held accountable. The government agreed to just print the money and give the banks the money back. So we all know that their system doesn't work. It's a system that's only designed to keep them enriched. It has nothing to do with keeping the people enriched. It has nothing to do with keeping the economy stable. The economy will stabilize itself. The free market will stabilize itself if you let it. All the unstable market fluctuations are caused by these bankers who manipulate the system through their fractional reserve lending and through their interest rates. So we're going to want to keep this, like I said, under close watch. We may want to watch out for something. If they make a deal, there may be a false flag. There may be some sort of an attack. There may be some sort of a mass shooting. They will really stop at nothing to keep people distracted and keep people from finding out the truth behind why so many people don't want Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump to come together with a true alliance. So I'm going to cut it off right there. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Please stay tuned for the next video. Not too much to report on the Haskell for now, but this Trump Putin meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. I wanted to get something out on this. There's going to be lots of spin on this story. There's going to be lots of opinions that are polar opposite, contradictory to one another. So keep your eyes open, read between the lines, pay attention to everything that's going on. Don't take anyone's word for anything, not even mine. Don't take my word for it. Do your research for yourself if you really want to try and find the truth. The truth is always hidden in plain sight. You just got to look for it. So thank you once again, and I will see you next time. Take care, everyone.